Good morning, Lighthouse. It's really great to be able to come and share with you this morning. I'm going to be sharing from Psalm 27, which is the series that we've been going through this week. I'm going to be reading from verses 5 and verses 6. I'm going to be unpacking it a little bit and give you a couple things to be thinking about over the course of the day. So the word says, "For he will hide me in his shelter in the day of trouble. He will conceal me under the cover of his tent. He will lift me high upon a rock. And now my head shall be lifted up above my enemies all around me. And I will offer in his tent sacrifices with shouts of joy. I will sing and make melody to the Lord." And I want to bring out a couple of things from these passages. And the first one I want to bring to you is there are three scenarios here that David talks about. And those three things, I'll repeat them again, are: he will hide me in his shelter, he will conceal me under the cover of his tent, and he will lift me high upon a rock. And these three things are like three promises that God has made to David. And David is certain that God is going to do these things for him. You know, it talks about he will hide me, he will conceal me, and he will lift me high. David is certain that God is going to do these things. So I want to really encourage you to be thinking about what are the promises that God has made to you, and are you certain that he's going to come through and do those things? You know, in the Bible it talks about all these different things that God promises to us. Are you holding on to those promises that he's made? And the second thing I want to bring out from that, and it really carries on from that, is verse 6. And it says, "And now my head shall be lifted up above my enemies all around me." And notice that this line is almost a result of the three lines before it. You know, when your head is lifted up above your enemies, what happens? What does that mean? So the analogy that I love to use is for this, when you're walking through, or if you've ever walked through a thick forest, and you've got trees all around you, really, really tall. So maybe you've been for a walk in Sheringham Park, and you look up and you see all the trees that are really high. If you can imagine yourself being lifted up out of that, and you can see all around you above, it doesn't make the trees disappear. And here, if you imagine, you're surrounded by the enemy. You know, you got distractions, you got hurt, you got pain, you got all these things surrounding you. And if God were to lift you up out of that situation, above that, it doesn't make the problems that you've been experiencing go away. But what it does is it removes it from your eye line, and your new eye line, your new position, you come face to face with God again, and you remember the purpose and the promises that he's made to you. So from this place of being face to face with our Father comes joy and thanksgiving and singing. And that's what the rest of verse 6 talks about. It says, after that it says, "And I will offer in his tent sacrifices with shouts of joy. I will sing and make melody to the Lord." And this is the response that we have when God brings us out of these situations where we've been surrounded by the enemy, when we've been distracted, when we've been through pain and hurt that people or other things have caused us. You know, our first response to God bringing us out of that place should be praise, thanksgiving, worship, singing. And that's the real challenge, isn't it? It's easy to do that when God's brought us out of somewhere. But also, not only in that time, but it's really, really important to do that through the difficult times as well. It's not a case of we should only be praising and singing to God when he's brought us out of situations. You know, we need to be doing that in the difficult times and the tough times as well. But what David's talking about here is really our first response to being brought up out of difficult situations. When God's been faithful, when he's kept his promise to us, our first response should always be bringing sacrifices to him with shouts of joy, singing to him and making melody. You know, that's our response as human beings to what the Father has done for us. So I want to leave you with two things to think about over the course of your day, or over the course of this week. And the first one is, God will hide you in his shelter. He will conceal you under the cover of his tent. He will lift you high on a rock. What are the promises God's made to you? And are you hanging on to them? Are you clinging on to them in this difficult time? And in response to that, whatever that looks like for you, whatever you're going through, whether it's people are relying on you in this difficult period, whether you can't fully depend on yourself, or you're struggling with loneliness, whatever it is, always remember that our response to what God does for us is to sing his praises, is to worship him, and it's to glorify his name. It's been great sharing with you this morning, Lighthouse. I hope you have a really good day. Remember to keep looking out for these little devotionals that we're putting out. I hope you're enjoying them. And stay in contact with each other, look after yourself, and we'll see you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.